The rain draped the small town of Willowbend in a melancholy shroud, blurring the edges of its familiar streets under a veil of mist. The streetlights flickered weakly, their pale glow casting fleeting halos onto the slick pavement. Sophia Miller quickened her pace, clutching the collar of her thin coat against the biting wind. Each step sent cold water splashing up her already damp jeans, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were weighed down by the exhaustion of another late shift at Margie's diner, where the smell of coffee and grease clung to her like a second skin. At 32, Sophia knew the rhythm of survival all too well. Her life was a constant balancing act. The long hours at the diner, the nursing classes 3 nights a week, and the endless stack of bills waiting on her kitchen counter. Dreams of a better future often felt like flickering shadows in her mind, comforting but elusive. The streets were almost deserted, the storm having driven most people indoors. As she turned onto Oak Hollow Lane, the faint sound of thunder rolled in the distance, a low, ominous growl. Her eyes, weary from the day's grind, scanned the road ahead, a habit born from years of caution. She nearly missed it at first. A dark figure slumped near the curb, motionless and barely distinguishable against the rain-slicked asphalt. Sophia hesitated, her heart pounding. For a fleeting moment, she considered walking on. The world had taught her to guard herself and prioritize self-preservation over risk, but something in her wouldn't allow it. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory, a reminder of the values she had instilled even in their most challenging times. When someone's in need, you don't look away. She approached cautiously, her sneakers squelching against the wet ground. As she drew closer, her breath hitched. It wasn't debris or a discarded pile of old clothes, as she'd initially thought. It was a man. He lay sprawled on his side, rain pooling around him, his face pale, and his expensive-looking coat plastered to his frame. His stillness sent a chill through her. "Sir?" Sophia's voice trembled as she crouched beside him, her hands hovering uncertainly over his shoulder. The night pressed in. The only sound was the relentless rain drumming. She shook him gently, but he didn't stir. A knot of panic tightened in her chest, but her instincts, honed from years of caring for her ailing mother, kicked in. With trembling fingers, she checked his pulse. It was faint but there. Her stomach sank further when she realized he wasn't breathing. She tilted his head back, her mind racing through the basics of CPR she had learned in her nursing classes. The rain lashed against her face as she pressed her hands to his chest and began compressions, counting rhythmically under her breath. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. Her wet hair clung to her cheeks, and her arms burned with the effort, but she didn't stop. The street lamp above them flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows over the scene. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man's body convulsed, and he gasped sharply, water sputtering from his lips. Sophia leaned back, her breath catching in relief. His eyes fluttered open briefly, revealing a piercing gray before they shut again. He was alive, but barely. The distant wail of sirens broke through the night's tension, signaling the arrival of help. Sophia sat back on her heels, her hands trembling from exertion and adrenaline. She hadn't even noticed the tears mingling with the rain on her face. As the paramedics arrived and began their work, one of them, a young woman with a steady voice, paused to look at her. "You saved his life," the paramedic said, a note of admiration in her tone. Sophia shook her head numbly, stepping back as they loaded the man onto a stretcher. She watched as the ambulance doors slammed shut and the red and blue lights disappeared into the rain-soaked distance. Alone again, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on her. Who was he? And what had brought someone like him, a man who didn't belong in a place like Willowbend, to such a state? Sophia glanced down at her trembling hands, still red and raw from the effort of saving him. She had done what she could. As she returned to her small apartment, the rain eased slightly, leaving a chill that sank deep into her bones. Somewhere, in the quiet shadows of the night, she felt the faintest ripple of change, like a thread pulling her toward an unknown future. Sophia leaned against the counter in her small, dimly lit kitchen later that night, the events replaying in her mind like an old film reel. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, a small comfort against the lingering adrenaline that refused to let her rest. She thought of the man's face, pale, almost ghostly, with rain streaming down his sharp features. He had seemed like a phantom, dropped into her quiet, predictable life without warning. She shivered, pulling the blanket from the back of her chair tighter around her shoulders. Her tea sat untouched on the counter, the warmth already fading. Questions nagged at her, refusing to settle. Who was he? What had happened to him? The tailored suit, the gleaming watch, the air of wealth that clung to him even in such a vulnerable state, all felt out of place in a small, sleepy town like Willowbend. As Sophia stood staring out her kitchen window at the drizzling rain, her phone buzzed on the counter. She reached for it, her heart skipping when an unknown number flashed on the screen. She debated whether to answer for a moment, but finally pressed the button. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. "Is this Sophia Miller?" A steady, professional voice asked. "Yes," she replied hesitantly. "This is Dr. Clayton from Willowbend General Hospital. We're calling regarding the patient you assisted tonight. He's stabilized now, and we wanted to thank you. The outcome could have been far worse. If not for your quick actions." Sophia's breath caught a mix of relief and disbelief washing over her. I didn't do anything special. I just acted." Dr. Clayton's voice softened. "You may not see it that way, but you saved his life." The patient regained consciousness briefly, but he was disoriented. "We're still assessing his condition." Sophia hesitated, the doctor's words sinking in. "Do you know who he is?" There was a pause. "His name is Logan Carter. Does that name mean anything to you?" Sophia frowned, shaking her head though no one could see her. "No, I don't think so." "Well, Mr. Carter appears to be someone of considerable means. His assistant arrived shortly after he was admitted. It seems they were in town for a business meeting." Sophia murmured thanks and hung up, setting the phone down with trembling hands. Logan Carter. The name felt unfamiliar yet heavy, as if it carried a weight she didn't yet understand. She glanced at the small stack of bills on her counter, her reality stark against the world someone like Logan Carter must belong to. For a moment, she allowed herself to wonder what it would be like to live without constantly fighting to stay afloat, to live with the ease and confidence of someone like him. But the thought felt distant, unattainable, and she pushed it aside. "Just focus on your own life," she whispered, though the words rang hollow. Logan Carter stirred across town in the quiet sterility of Willowbend General Hospital. His mind floated between fragmented images and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor that tethered him to reality. The first thing he registered was the sharp scent of antiseptic, mingling with the faint hum of machines. Slowly, his body began to awaken, though every muscle felt leaden, his chest tight as if it carried the weight of the ocean. He forced his eyes open, wincing against the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. "Mr. Carter, can you hear me?" A voice broke through the haze, calm but firm. He turned his head slightly, his vision clearing enough to make out a middle-aged nurse with warm eyes and a clipboard in hand. "Yes," he rasped, his throat dry and raw. "Where am I?" "You're at Willowbend General Hospital," the nurse explained, her tone soothing. "You were found unconscious on the street last night and brought in. You suffered a cardiac episode, but someone performed CPR and saved your life." Logan blinked her words, a jumble in his foggy mind. Fragments of memory began piecing together. Relentless rain, cold seeping into his bones, and then a voice. A woman's voice urging him to hold on. "Who?" he asked hoarsely, struggling to form the question. "Who saved me?" The nurse shook her head gently. "We don't know her name. She left before the paramedics arrived, but from what we've heard, she was the reason you're here now." Logan's brow furrowed as he stared at the stark white ceiling. The memory of the woman's voice, steady and determined, tugged at him. He tried to grasp at the fleeting images, her face framed by the rain, her hands pressed firmly against his chest, but they slipped away like smoke. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. A man in a sharp suit stepped in, his polished demeanor at odds with the hospital's humble surroundings. Logan recognized him instantly. Daniel Price, his assistant and the gatekeeper of his meticulously controlled life. "Logan," Daniel said, his tone measured but edged with relief. "It's good to see you awake. You gave us quite a scare." Logan exhaled slowly, his chest aching with the effort. "What happened?" Daniel stepped closer, setting his briefcase on the small table beside the bed. "You were here for a meeting about the land deal on the outskirts of town. Your car was found parked a few blocks away, and you collapsed on the street. We're still piecing everything together, but you pushed yourself too hard again." Logan closed his eyes briefly, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He wasn't a stranger to the dangers of overwork, but this felt different, raw, humbling in a way he wasn't prepared for. "The woman," he said after a pause, his voice firmer now. "I want to find her." Daniel hesitated, clearly wary of the request. "I can inquire, but this is a small town, Logan. She might not want to be found." Logan's gray eyes locked onto Daniel's, determination flickering within them. "Do it anyway. I owe her my life." The assistant gave a curt nod, pulling out his phone as Logan sank back against the pillows. The heart monitor beeped steadily in the background, its rhythm a stark reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. Unbeknownst to him, Sophia Miller lay awake in her modest apartment, the threads of their lives already beginning to weave together in ways neither could foresee. Sophia sat by the window of her small apartment, the early morning light filtering through the lace curtains and casting soft patterns on the worn linoleum floor. A steaming mug of tea rested on the table in front of her, untouched. The weight of the previous night hung heavy in the air, its events replaying in her mind like an unsolved puzzle. She traced a finger along the edge of the chipped tabletop, her thoughts tangled with emotions. Logan Carter. The name the hospital had given her felt foreign, almost too large to belong to the man she had found lying helpless in the rain. His tailored suit and polished watch hinted at a life far removed from her own, a life of wealth and power, untouched by the grinding monotony that defined her existence. Sophia glanced at the stack of overdue bills on the counter, the stark reminder of her reality. The money she had earned from her shift at the diner barely made a dent in the growing pile, and the prospect of her nursing degree, a dream she had held close to her heart for years, seemed as distant as ever. She thought of her mother's frail voice, always encouraging her to pursue that dream, even as illness consumed her. "You're meant for more than this, Sophia," her mother had said, her words like a fragile thread pulling Sophia forward through life's hardships. But the reality of pursuing more often felt like a cruel joke. Every step toward her goal seemed met with resistance, a leaky faucet here, an unexpected medical bill there. Yet last night had reminded her of something she hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. Her mind drifted back to the man's face, pale and shadowed under the flickering streetlight. The feel of his chest beneath her hands as she fought to keep him alive. The soft, rasping sound of his first breath breaking through the storm. It had been terrifying, but it had also been a moment of clarity. For a fleeting second, she knew exactly what to do. And it was enough to make her believe that perhaps her dream of becoming a nurse wasn't as impossible. Sophia shook herself, suddenly aware of how cold her tea had gone. She poured the liquid down the sink, her hands trembling slightly. "Focus on today," she murmured as if saying the words aloud would make them accurate. But the truth was more complicated to ignore. Something had shifted in her. And though she didn't know it yet, that shift was the beginning of something much bigger than her small-town life. The following day, Sophia's routine at Margie's diner was anything but routine. She had expected the world to move on, as it always did, leaving the strange events of the night before tucked into the shadows of her memory. But by mid-morning, the whispers began. "You hear about the guy they brought into the hospital last night?" One of the regulars muttered to another, their voices low but carrying just enough for Sophia to catch snippets. "Big shot, businessman, I heard. It's a fancy car, the whole deal. What's someone like that doing here?" Sophia kept her head down, refilling coffee cups and wiping down the counter with practiced efficiency, but the words made her stomach twist. The small-town rumor mill was relentless, and she knew better than to expect it to stop anytime soon. The lunch rush had just died when Margie, the diner's owner, shuffled over with an envelope. "This came for you earlier," Margie said, her brow furrowed with curiosity. Sophia wiped her hands on her apron, frowning as she took the envelope. Her name was written neatly across the front in an unfamiliar hand, and her heart skipped as she noticed a law firm's logo embossed on the corner. "Everything all right?" Margie asked, tilting her head. "Yeah," Sophia replied, though her voice sounded far from convincing. "Thanks, Margie." She slipped the envelope into her pocket and finished her shift in a haze, her mind racing with possibilities. When she returned to her apartment, her hands trembled as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded letter on heavy, cream-colored paper. The bold letterhead bore the name Harrington and Price Law Offices, and the text below felt like a punch to the gut. "Ms. Sophia Miller, we are writing to notify you that your testimony is required in an upcoming legal matter concerning Mr. Logan Carter, whom you aided on the evening of date." Sophia reread the letter twice, her heart pounding. Testimony? Legal matter? The man she had saved was now pulling her into something she didn't understand, something that felt far too large for her quiet life. And then she noticed the last line. "Mr. Carter has requested to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Please contact our office to arrange a meeting." She set the letter down, staring at it as if it might suddenly rewrite itself. Meeting with him? The idea made her chest tighten. What could someone like Logan Carter possibly want with her? A waitress from Willowbend who could barely keep her own life in order. Sophia's phone buzzed on the counter, the sudden noise jolting her. She reached for it and saw Lily's name flashing on the screen. "Hey, ma'am." Lily's cheerful voice greeted her, though it quickly turned serious. "You sound off. What's wrong?" "I just got a letter," Sophia said, her voice low. "It's about the guy I saved last night. His name is Logan Carter, and he's apparently, well, important. And now they want me to testify in some legal thing. And he wants to meet me." There was a beat of silence before Lily's voice returned, tinged with excitement. Wait. You're telling me this guy is a millionaire? And now he wants to meet you?" "Ma'am, this is the kind of thing that only happens in movies." "It doesn't feel like a movie," Sophia replied, her voice edged with anxiety. "It feels overwhelming. I don't know what to do." "Do it," Lily said firmly. "You saved his life, Sophia. If he wants to thank you, let him. And who knows? Maybe this is your chance to step into something bigger." Sophia sighed, running a hand through her hair. Lily's enthusiasm was infectious, but the doubts still lingered. The thought of stepping into Logan Carter's world felt like a storm, unpredictable and full of hidden dangers. Yet as she sat there, staring at the letter, another thought crept in. The life she was clinging to, the life of endless shifts and unpaid bills, was its kind of storm. Perhaps, for once, it was time to take a risk. The sky was an overcast gray when Sophia stood outside the Willowbend General Hospital's administrative wing, clutching the strap of her handbag as she stared at the glass doors. Her fingers twitched, her nerves buzzing with anticipation and dread. The letter from Logan Carter's legal team had been sitting on her kitchen counter for 3 days, staring at her like an unspoken challenge. Now, she was about to meet the man who had unknowingly dragged her into a whirlwind she didn't understand. Taking a steadying breath, Sophia stepped inside. The quiet hum of hospital life surrounded her, the soft murmur of conversations, the rhythmic beep of monitors, the faint scent of disinfectant. A receptionist greeted her with a polite smile. "Ms. Miller? Mr. Carter is waiting for you in the conference room," the receptionist said, guiding her down the hall. "Right this way." Sophia followed, her heart pounding with each step. When the receptionist opened the door, she was greeted by a warm, modern room with sleek furnishings. Logan Carter sat at the head of a long table, his posture straight, his presence commanding. He wore a tailored navy suit that fit so perfectly it looked effortless, and his eyes, sharp, stormy gray, lifted to meet hers as she entered. "Sophia Miller," Logan said, his voice low but steady, carrying the faintest hint of gratitude. He rose to his feet, extending a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Sophia hesitated before shaking his hand, his grip firm yet careful. "Mr. Carter," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm glad to see you're doing better." He gestured for her to sit. "Please call me Logan. And I owe you my life, literally. I'm not sure how to begin thanking you." Sophia took the seat across from him, unsure how to respond. I just did what anyone else would have done, she said quietly. Not everyone would have, Logan countered, his gaze unwavering. I've seen people in my life who would walk past a dying man if it didn't serve their interests. What you did took courage. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to handle the weight of his words. Her life had never been one for accolades. It was a quiet existence defined by struggle, not heroism. Why did you ask me here? She asked, her tone more direct than intended. Logan didn't seem fazed. Because I wanted to meet the person who saved my life. And because I think we both deserve some clarity about what happened that night. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching hers. Do you remember anything unusual? Did you see anyone else near the scene before you found me? Sophia frowned, her mind racing back to the rain-soaked streets. No, it was quiet. The storm had driven most people indoors. When I saw you, I thought you were trash at first. She flushed, realizing how blunt that sounded. I mean, you were lying there so still. Logan chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to surprise even him. Fair enough. Given the state I was in, I don't blame you. He exhaled, his expression darkening. The reason I ask is that my assistant has uncovered irregularities. My car was parked 3 blocks away, yet I do remember leaving it. And I wasn't in this town by accident. I was here for a land deal. A deal that suddenly seems far more complicated than it should be. Sophia's unease grew. You think someone did this to you? Logan hesitated before answering. I don't know yet. But my instincts tell me this wasn't random. His gaze softened, his intensity giving way to something more vulnerable. And that puts you in danger, Sophia. Whoever left me there could see you as a loose end. Her breath caught. I don't. How could I be a target? I don't even know you. Exactly, Logan said firmly. You're an innocent bystander in all this, which makes you an easier target if someone wants to tie up loose ends. Sophia stared at him, her mind spinning. She had come here to meet the man she'd saved, not to be thrust into a conspiracy. Then what am I supposed to do? She asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Logan leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. I'll make sure you're protected. My team will keep an eye on you, and if you notice anything unusual, anything at all, you call me immediately. Sophia wanted to protest, to insist that she could handle herself, but something in Logan's expression stopped her. It wasn't pity, sincerity, a deep-seated belief that he owed her more than words. I don't need your protection, she said finally, though her voice lacked conviction. Maybe not, Logan replied, his tone soft but resolute. But you've got it anyway. The following day, Sophia awoke to a car idling outside her apartment. She peered through the curtains and saw a sleek black vehicle parked at the curb, its windows tinted. A man in a sharp suit stepped out and approached her door. Her stomach knotted as he knocked, his posture impeccably professional. He extended an envelope with a slight bow when she opened the door. Ms. Miller, Mr. Carter asked me to deliver this to you. Sophia frowned, accepting the envelope. What is it? He said it was a token of his gratitude. Good day, ma'am. Before she could respond, the man returned to the car and drove off, leaving her in her doorway with the envelope. She closed the door and sat at her small kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note on heavy, embossed stationery. Sophia, words can't repay what you did for me, but I hope this small gesture can ease some of your burdens. Thank you for reminding me that there are still good people in the world. Logan. Beneath the note was a substantial check made out in her name. Sophia's breath hitched as she read the amount. It was more money than she had ever seen, enough to pay her bills, her mother's lingering medical debts, and even the next semester's tuition for her nursing program. But along with the relief came a wave of uncertainty. She didn't want to feel like a charity case, nor did she want to be indebted to someone she barely knew. Yet the weight of her reality pressed against her, reminding her of the countless times she had gone to bed hungry to keep the lights on. Sophia folded the check carefully, placing it back into the envelope. She would think about it, she told herself. She would decide what to do when her thoughts weren't so tangled. But as she sat there, staring out the window at the world beyond Willowbend, She couldn't shake the feeling that her life was shifting in ways she couldn't yet understand. And she wasn't sure if she was ready. Sophia spent the rest of the morning pacing her small apartment, the envelope resting on her kitchen counter like an uninvited guest. The check within felt heavier than it should, as though it carried monetary value and an unspoken obligation. She wrestled with her thoughts, her emotions swinging between gratitude and resentment. The sum was enough to pull her out of the financial hole she had been in for years. She thought of the mounting bills that seemed to multiply no matter how hard she worked, the nights spent studying by dim light because she couldn't afford to replace the faulty bulb in her lamp, and the dreams of becoming a nurse that had begun to feel like a fading mirage. The money could change all of that. But at what cost? Accepting such a substantial gift from Logan Carter, a man she barely knew, made her uneasy. It wasn't just the pride of wanting to handle her problems independently. It was the fear of what accepting it might imply. Would it make her beholden to him? Would others think she was using him for personal gain? Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her spiraling thoughts. Lily's name flashed on the screen, and Sophia hesitated momentarily before answering. "Hey, Em." Lily's cheerful voice greeted her. "How'd the meeting go? Did Mr. Big Shot Carter thank you in person?" Sophia sighed, her voice tinged with weariness. "It went fine. He thanked me, and now I'm dealing with something else." "Something else?" Lily pressed. "Spill. What happened?" Sophia hesitated, glancing at the envelope. "He sent me a check. A big one. Like, life-changing big." There was a beat of silence before Lily's voice returned, a mix of awe and disbelief. "Are you serious? That's amazing. What's the problem?" "I don't know if I should accept it," Sophia admitted, her voice low. "It feels complicated. Like taking it might mean something more than I'm ready for." Lily laughed softly. "Sophia, you saved his life. If he wants to thank you with a check, let him. It's not like you asked for it. You've worked so hard for so long. Maybe this is the break you've been waiting for. But what if it changes things?" Sophia murmured. "What if people start thinking I'm just some gold digger? Who cares what people think?" Lily countered, her tone firm. "You've spent your whole life worrying about what everyone else needs. Maybe it's time to think about what you need." Sophia fell silent, her thoughts racing. Lily was right in some ways. The money could give her a fresh start, a chance to focus on her dreams without the constant weight of survival pressing down on her. But it still felt like a leap into the unknown, and the unknown had always terrified her. The following day, Sophia resolved to put the envelope aside and focus on her routine. The familiarity of work at Margie's diner, with its clattering dishes and the comforting hum of regular chatter, had always been a source of stability. But that morning, something was different. The bell above the diner door jingled as she wiped down the counter during the mid-morning lull. Sophia looked up, and her breath caught. Logan Carter stepped inside, his presence commanding yet understated. He wasn't wearing the suit from their meeting, but a more casual ensemble. A crisp shirt rolled up at the sleeves and tailored slacks that still exuded quiet wealth. Heads turned as he walked in, his polished demeanor contrasting the diner's homey charm. Sophia felt the weight of the stares, the whispers already beginning among the regulars. Logan's eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. He offered a small, almost hesitant smile before going to the counter. "Ms. Miller," he greeted her, his voice low and warm. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Sophia wiped her hands on a nearby towel, ignoring the sudden flush in her cheeks. "Not at all, Mr. Carter. What brings you here?" "I was passing through town and thought I'd stop by to see how you were doing," he said, his tone sincere. "And please call me Logan." Sophia raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping into her expression. "Passing through town? That's quite the coincidence." Logan chuckled softly, his gray eyes meeting hers. "You caught me. I wanted to make sure you got the envelope I sent, and to see if you had any questions." Sophia hesitated, glancing around at the curious onlookers before leaning slightly closer. "I got it, but I'm not sure I can accept it." Logan frowned, his brow furrowing slightly. "Why not?" "Because it's too much," Sophia said honestly. "I appreciate the gesture, but I don't want to feel like I owe you anything." Logan studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Sophia, you don't owe me anything. That check isn't about debt. It's about gratitude. You saved my life. The least I can do is try to make yours easier. Sophia looked down, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her apron. It's not that simple. It can be, Logan replied gently, but I won't push you. If you don't want to accept it, that's your choice. Just know that the offer comes with no strings attached. Before she could respond, Margie appeared from the kitchen, her curiosity too strong to keep her away. Sophia, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? She asked, her tone teasing. Sophia sighed, gesturing toward Logan. Margie, this is Logan Carter. Logan, this is Margie, the owner of the diner. Logan extended a hand, his smile polite. A pleasure to meet you, Margie. Margie shook his hand, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Well, aren't you a charmer? You'll have to excuse the folks here. We're not used to visitors like you. Logan chuckled, the tension in the room easing slightly. No need to apologize. I appreciate the warm welcome. As Margie retreated to the kitchen, Logan turned back to Sophia. I meant what I said. The choice is yours. But if you ever need anything at all, you have my number. He placed a business card on the counter and left, the sound of the bell signaling his departure. Sophia stared at the card, her emotions swirling in a confusing mix of gratitude, unease, and something she couldn't quite name. The whispers in the diner grew louder, but Sophia tuned them out. She tucked the card into her pocket, her thoughts churning. Logan's words lingered, his sincerity leaving an impression she hadn't expected. For the first time, Sophia wondered if accepting help didn't always mean surrendering control. Maybe, just maybe, it could mean something else entirely. A chance to finally step out of the shadow of survival and into the light of possibility. The days following Logan's visit to the diner felt like a blur to Sophia. Whispers about her connection to the wealthy stranger began to spread through the small town like wildfire. At Margie's, the regulars cast curious glances, their conversations often dropping to hushed murmurs as she passed. Even the cashier at the grocery store offered a sly grin when Sophia handed over her items. Big city connections, huh? The cashier remarked, her tone light but loaded with implication. Sophia forced a polite smile, ignoring the comment, but inside, her frustration simmered. The town had always been a close-knit community where everyone knew everyone's business, but she had never been the subject of such intense scrutiny. It wasn't just irritating, it was exhausting. That evening, as she returned to her apartment, the envelope with Logan's check still sat untouched on the counter. She had avoided looking at it as if its presence could be forgotten if she just didn't acknowledge it. But now, with the town's chatter weighing on her, she couldn't help but stare at it, her mind tangled in doubts. Could she accept this without losing a piece of herself? Or was she letting her pride keep her from an opportunity to change her life? The faint buzz of her phone snapped her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Lily. "Em, you okay?" Heard the whispers. "Don't let them get to you. Call me if you need to vent." Sophia smiled faintly at the screen. Lily's support was a lifeline, her unwavering belief in Sophia's worth cutting through the noise. She typed a quick response. "I'm okay, just tired of being the town's main topic. Let's catch up soon." There was a knock at her door as she set her phone down. Sophia frowned, glancing at the clock. It was late for visitors. Cautiously, she opened the door to find Margie standing there, her face set in an expression of motherly concern. "Margie?" Sophia asked, surprised. "What are you doing here?" Margie stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her sharp eyes scanning the room before settling on Sophia. "I've been hearing the talk, Sophia," she said, her tone firm but kind. "And I wanted to see how you were holding up." Sophia sighed, closing the door behind her. "I'm fine, Margie. Just trying to ignore it." Margie crossed her arms, her no-nonsense demeanor softening as she leaned against the counter. "Listen, people will always have something to say, especially in this town. But you can't let their opinions decide your future. That man, Logan, seems genuine. If he's offering you a way to make your life easier, maybe you should take it." Sophia looked away, her voice quiet. "What if it changes how people see me? What if they think I'm just taking advantage of him?" Margie shook her head. "Sophia, You've spent your whole life helping others, putting yourself last. You deserve to take something for yourself for once. And anyone who judges you for that doesn't know the real you." The words hung in the air, settling in Sophia's chest like a quiet truth. Maybe Margie was right. Perhaps it was time to stop letting fear hold her back. The following morning, Sophia woke with a clearer sense of purpose. She would meet Logan again and tell him her decision. But as she prepared to call him, her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Frowning, she answered cautiously. "Hello? Sophia Miller?" A smooth, unfamiliar voice asked. "This is Elliot Price, Mr. Carter's assistant." Sophia tensed. "Yes, that's me. Mr. Carter would like to invite you to his estate for dinner this evening," Elliot continued. "He believes it's time to discuss everything more thoroughly. If that works for you, a car will pick you up at 6. Sophia hesitated. Dinner at Logan's estate? It felt too formal, too intimate. But curiosity tugged at her, and the promise of clarity was hard to resist. "That's fine," she said finally. "Thank you." "Very well, Ms. Miller. The driver will meet you outside your apartment at 6 sharp." The call ended, leaving Sophia with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She spent the day trying to focus on her usual tasks, but her thoughts kept circling back to the evening ahead. What did Logan want to discuss so urgently? When the sleek black car arrived, Sophia had changed into a simple yet elegant outfit, a navy blouse and black slacks that felt polished but not ostentatious. The driver greeted her with a nod and opened the door, the quiet hum of the car's interior calming her nerves as they drove through the winding roads outside town. Logan's estate was breathtaking. The sprawling grounds were meticulously landscaped, and the house blended modern design and classic elegance, its large windows glowing warmly in the twilight. Elliot was waiting at the entrance as the car pulled up, his professional demeanor unchanged. "Ms. Miller," he greeted her, extending a hand to guide her inside. "Mr. Carter is expecting you." The house's interior was just as impressive as the exterior, with high ceilings, tasteful artwork, and an understated luxury that spoke to Logan's wealth without flaunting it. Elliot led Sophia to a private dining room, where Logan was waiting. He rose as she entered, his smile genuine. "Sophia, thank you for coming." Sophia returned his smile, her earlier nerves fading slightly. "Thank you for inviting me." They sat across from each other at the table set with understated elegance. The meal began with a light conversation, Logan asking about her day and sharing stories about his experiences in Willow Bend. But as the evening progressed, the tone shifted. "I wanted to speak with you in person," Logan said, setting down his glass of wine, "because I've learned some things that concern me." Sophia's brow furrowed. "What kind of things?" Logan leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "The night you found me wasn't an accident. Someone meant for me to be left there, vulnerable. And I believe whoever did this might see you as a threat." Sophia's heart sank. "Why would I be a threat? I don't know anything about your life." "Exactly," Logan said. "But you were there. You saved me, and that makes you a loose end. I've already taken steps to ensure your safety, but I need you to be cautious. If anything unusual happens, anything at all, you call me immediately." Sophia stared at him, her mind racing. The idea of being caught in someone else's web of danger felt surreal, but Logan's sincerity left no room for doubt. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "I know," Logan replied, his voice gentle, "and I hate that you're involved. But I promise, I won't let anything happen to you." As their conversation continued, Logan shared more about his suspicions, his guarded tone revealing how much this weighed on him. When Sophia left the estate that evening, her emotions were a whirlwind of fear, curiosity, and an unexpected trust in the man who had turned her life upside down. Her path had shifted, and she wasn't sure where it would lead. But one thing was clear: she was no longer walking it alone. The days following Sophia's dinner with Logan were filled with uneasy tension. The revelation that someone had orchestrated Logan's near-death experience, and that she might be in danger, was a weight she couldn't shake. Logan's warning echoed in her mind as she went about her routine at Margie's diner. Every unfamiliar face that walked through the door quickened her pulse, and every shadow seemed to loom more significant than it should. As Sophia cleared a table near the window that afternoon, a man entered the diner. He was sharply dressed, his suit crisp and tailored, but something in his demeanor set her on edge. His gaze swept the room before settling on her. A smile tugged at his lips but didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Miller," he said, his voice smooth but tinged with something unsettling. "May I have a word?" Sophia's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I'm sorry. I'm working. If you'd like to order, feel free to sit anywhere." The man chuckled, unperturbed. "It won't take long. I just wanted to express my gratitude for your heroic actions last night." Saving Logan Carter? Quite the story. Her stomach churned. This wasn't a casual encounter. "I was just in the right place at the right time," she said carefully, her hands tightening on the tray she carried. The man leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Sometimes being in the right place can be dangerous, don't you think? People who meddle often find themselves caught in situations they're not prepared for." Sophia's breath hitched. Before she could respond, Margie appeared behind the counter, her sharp eyes narrowing at the man. "Can I help you with something?" Margie's tone was firm, her presence a reassuring anchor for Sophia. The man straightened, his smile returning. "No, thank you. I was just leaving." He tipped his head slightly toward Sophia before turning and walking out, leaving a suffocating silence in his wake. Margie placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Who was that?" Sophia shook her head, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but I think he was trying to scare me." Margie's expression hardened. "Whatever this is, Sophia, you're not dealing with it alone. We'll figure it out." That evening, Sophia sat at her small kitchen table, Logan's business card in her hand. She debated calling him, her fear warring with her desire to protect her quiet life in Willow Bend. Finally, she dialed the number, her fingers trembling. Logan answered on the second ring, his voice immediately concerned. "Sophia, is everything okay?" She recounted the encounter at the diner, her words spilling out in a rush. Logan listened intently, his silence heavy as he processed what she said. "This confirms my suspicions," he said finally, his tone grim. "Whoever's behind this isn't finished. But they've made a mistake by approaching you. It means they're desperate." Sophia's chest tightened. "Desperate for what?" "To keep me from discovering the truth," Logan replied. "And now they know you're someone I care about." The weight of his words settled over her like a storm cloud. "What do we do?" "I'm sending someone to keep an eye on you," Logan said firmly. "A security detail. They'll stay out of sight, but you'll be protected." Sophia wanted to protest, to insist that she didn't need anyone watching over her, but the memory of the man's veiled threat silenced her objections. "Okay," she said quietly. Logan's voice softened. "Sophia, I know this is overwhelming, but I promise I won't let anything happen to you. You're not alone in this." The call ended, but Sophia's mind was far from at ease. She spent the night poring over every detail of her encounter at the diner, trying to piece together the puzzle Logan had drawn her into. Once so predictable, her life now felt like a chessboard where she was a pawn in a much larger game. 2 nights later, as Sophia left the diner after a late shift, the streets of Willow Bend were tranquil. The cool night air carried the faint scent of rain, and the dim glow of the streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. She noticed a car parked across the street as she approached her apartment. It wasn't a familiar vehicle, and its presence sent a ripple of unease through her. She quickened her pace, clutching her bag tightly. Before she could reach the door, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was the man from the diner. "Ms. Miller," he said smoothly, blocking her path. "We need to talk." Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears, but she refused to let her fear show. "I have nothing to say to you." "That's a shame," the man replied, his tone darkening. "Because I have plenty to say to you. Stay out of Logan Carter's business, or you'll regret it." Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but a sudden movement behind the man caught her eye. An instant, a second figure appeared. A burly man in a dark suit who grabbed the stranger by the arm and twisted it behind his back. "That's enough," the newcomer said, his voice like steel. The stranger struggled but stopped when another man approached from the car Sophia had noticed earlier. He was tall and imposing, his presence commanding attention. "Sophia, Are you okay? The man asked, his tone surprisingly gentle. She nodded shakily, recognizing him as part of the security detail Logan had mentioned. I'm fine. The stranger was escorted into the car, his protests muffled as the doors slammed shut. The tall man turned back to Sophia. You're safe now, he said. But this won't be the last time they try something. Mr. Carter wants you to know he's taking care of it. Sophia nodded, her fear giving way to a simmering anger. She was tired of being a pawn, tired of feeling powerless. The following day, she called Logan. I'm done sitting on the sidelines, she told him, her voice firm. If I'm part of this, I need to know everything. Logan's response was immediate. Meet me at the estate tonight. We'll talk. As Sophia hung up, a new resolve took hold. She didn't know what awaited her, but one thing was clear. She wouldn't let fear dictate her life any longer. Whatever danger lay ahead, she would face it head-on, with Logan by her side.